Welcome back, Magical Skulls, to another Magi Monday where we are wrapping up the summer. Can you believe it? It is the last week of summer season, week 13, and we are talking about the master of the mind. My name is Andrea Blythe, traveling Magi of Let Love Rise, and I am so excited to honor two kings today who are joining me, two masters of the mind. Please welcome Ms. Kim Harrison, life coach for dreamers, a birth card king of clubs. Go ahead and say hello, Kim.
Hello, thank you for having me, Andy.
So excited to have you here. And the one and only Chloe Pedalino, Reiki amazingness, and also fellow student of the cards of the Magi and King of Clubs planetary ruling card. Welcome, Chloe, to the show.
Hello, hello, hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. So you will notice right off of the bat that the two kings that I have here don't look like kings that you might conjure up in your mind. Henry VIII is the first one. King Louis XIV is probably another. But kings typically in a male's body, right? And here we have two women. And in fact, I have two other women that are in my immediate circle that are also King of Clubs cards, either by birth or by ruling card. And it's important to note that when it comes to the Magi, and to the cards that are yours based on the solar energy of your birthday, that is how the system is run. So it has a very scientific calculation side and then also this very spiritual side of the essence of the cards. So it doesn't matter the gender of your body if you are a king or a queen for that matter. But the king is the master of the mind. This is the kings and the queens are the highest of all the suits. And this summer we have been talking about the club, which is all about communication. It is intuition. It is knowledge seeking. It is wisdom. And it is mastery today. We are talking about mastery of the mind. And I want to have this conversation with a couple of kings. Just to first, I guess the first question I'm curious to know is how does it feel, honestly, to be not just royal, but to be the king? And again, you guys are both in female bodies. What does that feel like for you? And that's going to be the opening question.
Kim, you
Silence.
want to take it
You want
or
me to
what?
start? Okay, I'll start. You
Yeah.
bet. Well, it was really great to learn that I was a king of clubs because that kind of kicked some cogs into place for me because I've always felt like a leader. I've always felt like I was kind of quote unquote royalty for some reason. Like there was um, like I had some authority that I didn't know where it came from, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And people
Yeah.
put me in that position too, oftentimes like I'll even say I'm not gonna pipe up with what I'm thinking. I'm gonna let other people figure this out. And oftentimes it's just dead silence. I'm like, okay, fine. All right, let me tell you what what I think we should do or how this should go. And I find myself kind of reluctantly always being that person, like the one that people look to for knowledge. And
And
now I'm kind of
leadership
I now
and
I
leadership.
and leadership, and
Yeah.
embrace that a little bit more now than I did before, recognizing that as that coming in with that king energy, that's just what people respond to that. And so then learning how to use it in a way where that is different,
Well,
learning how to use it in be a benevolent king and not a tyrannical king, because that is important.
and that is so true. And I often say that the King of Clubs for me personally is just one of the most benevolent kings. Not really a cutthroat king, not a one-eyed king, and is very much about sharing the wisdom of the mind. And all kings bear responsibility and stepping into leadership and how important that is. And so, Kim, I know you and I joke often that about your king is showing. Watch out. Your king is showing because you'll often come into a space and you're like, I am just going to observe. I'm not going to jump in. I'm not going to step up. I'm not going to, but you might have that ability to see what isn't happening, functioning well. And maybe, the tolerance for that is a little bit less, or like you just like, let's just figure this out. Like, let's just get the show going. Chloe, do you feel that same energy like sometimes where you can just see the inefficiencies, or you're just like, let's just get this handled?
Yeah, yeah. I think that, a couple of things. As a king energetically, so you're talking about like when Kim enters a room, like you feel her presence. And I think, people have said that to me too and say, well, Chloe, just your presence is impactful. And so that's taken me some time to be like, okay, and start recognizing that. And I think, we're talking about being a female with a king presence. I think women, we've been kind of trained to be in the background a little bit, to kind of be less seen and such. And so that's been interesting to kind of navigate. Wait, I do actually have this presence just by kind of being there. So that's been a cool thing as I've learned about this as my planetary ruling card. And yeah, in terms of knowledge, and kind of putting things together or noticing dynamics or problem solving rather quickly, as a king of as having the king of clubs as what my cards. Yeah, I think it's something that comes naturally to us. So it has also taken me time to realize, okay, other people don't actually come to these conclusions as quickly. And it's funny how Kim's saying, okay, I'm gonna let them figure it out because we've already figured it out. So yes, that
Until your
definitely,
tolerance is like, I can't anymore, let you, I've just got to.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But then also realizing that actually it's part of what we're here to do
Mm,
is be leaders and to teach and to lead the way in some ways. And so it actually isn't always about sitting back, and letting folks figure it out. Sometimes it is about expressing ourselves and the fact that we're already 5 steps ahead. But I will say, as a woman again, and I think when I was younger, especially when I was younger too, I would get a lot of pushback about that. Like, how could I know so quickly, or how could that? And so that's also taken time to kind of grow into, and to be comfortable with that in some ways.
right. And you, to further your energy, your second card, or your birth card, that gives you the king as your planetary ruling card, is the two of clubs. So you are a double club energy. You are of the mind. So the fact that you
Yes.
work so much with energy and your intuition, the two really softens your king. The two is a very feminine number of cooperation
Yes.
and communication, and the king is the responsible one. And I think that that's part of the energy that I would be curious about, as again, as women kings, to be able to be like, no, this, I actually have lots of great ideas and solutions, and I see things, and I could be responsible with what I want to communicate here without being that overly authoritative or overly masculinized. Although I think that there is already, just because you are a woman, there is like this, oh, they're aggressive, or they're um,
Sure.
demanding. And I think part of the cards is like, don't let anybody else's perception dim your light. You are meant to be leaders. That's what all kings are, leaders. Doing it responsibly, however, is really the key to playing this card well. um yeah. I want to talk about your Pluto card for life. You guys know that your Pluto card for life is the Queen of Hearts. And the Queen of Hearts would be the opposing energy, like not opposing, but it is a very motherly card. It is the card also of sexual pleasure and desire, but very nurturing. She is the master of love and home and hearth. But as a Pluto for the lifetime challenge for a King of Clubs, it is a challenge to step into that softer energy. So, does that resonate with either of you?
Sure. Oh, yeah. It does. But I have the Four of Hearts in my suit too, so
Second.
it helps me a little bit. But I struggle sometimes with people who are Queen of Hearts.
Ah,
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
is a really yes.
yeah.
Interesting.
And I don't really know what that is, but I can recognize that. No, I lead with the yeah, that masculine energy first, but yet I have, I have a soft side too, and I have to embrace that. Um,
Yeah, a very grounding. The Four of Hearts, your secondary card, is a very grounding love, energy, security, safety, comfort.
Yeah, and I'm totally different in my work environment than I am in my personal environment. And so now that now that I'm blending those two lives together, that's working better. But when I was younger, I was a totally different person. When I'm in my masculine, I'm in a work environment, I was very much um, uh, almost again the tyrannical. I know it all. I was a know-it-all. Like the first words out of my mouth were, "I know, I know, I know." And I really did know. And but I've learned how to navigate that a little differently to where now when I'm talking to somebody or when I'm in a group setting, I ask a lot more questions. I may know where it's going to go, but I'm asking more questions because I want to gain knowledge, right?
Mm.
Because that's also part of this card, right? Is to learn. And so I get really fascinated with what people are thinking and where they are. And so that I learn. So in a recent experience, I had an opinion about something, and I was talking to a group of people. And so I asked a lot of questions. So I led the conversation by asking, so I want to know more about that. Can you share more about what you just said to me? Because I think that's very fascinating. And then I learned more knowledge. And then someone else said something because they shared something from that. And that helped to create a better dynamic of, and I also shifted my focus because, or shifted my perspective because I got the knowledge that I needed. So that's how I think, as a crone king, that's how that's coming forward. I'm much wiser about how I utilize this leadership and
Mm.
share it with others because it's important to gain that knowledge. Because knowledge is the most important thing to me. It's not necessarily being the leader, but the knowledge,
The
learning,
seeking, the
and and
seeking of
re- and for me personally, and also teaching others to have that to learn what they're thinking and understand what their perspective is, which doesn't even affect me most of the time, but that's my gift almost, is to help you figure out what you're thinking. And that's how I use that king energy.
wow. That is so cool. Anything you want to add to that, Chloe? That, that came out?
Well, I think what Kim was saying on the pursuit of knowledge, like that is fundamental to the King of Clubs, I think, as well. Like although we have a lot of knowledge, we still are always seeking knowledge. That's core to
Yeah.
us and very important. So, and the pursuit of truth is specific as well to the King of Clubs. So
Mm.
there's this desire. I don't know if Kim resonates, but I certainly
Yeah.
resonate with this desire and seeking of what's the actual truth, what's the real, core, and what's the real meaning, and what.
So if
So,
you hear something, you might just keep asking yourself questions or keep going to the core of it. I really like that concept of like what you're saying. Like, do you do that often when
yeah.
something is
Well,
presented to you? Like you did those myth bustings, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, right. In career wise, also, I'm a clinical social worker and therapist. So I want to get to the etiology, the root of why people are how they are, right? I mean, that's my specialty. I'm fascinated by the human mind, so that was my bread and butter for a long time, and now transitioning more to spirituality, absolutely there's this thirst for, like, I actually, but what's behind the veil that we're being fed this information. I actually want to know what the real truth is. And so certainly I think my King of Clubs has led me a lot in that realm as well, and did podcasts and that sort of thing, and I'm coming out with more stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely the pursuit of knowledge and truth.
I love that. I love that. And as just the pursuit of truth as as a token or as a part of that wisdom seeking is really to understand, well, what's true here and what are the sources and what are different angles of it? Because that is, I mean, and that is mastery, right? Is looking at something from all angles and what is true and what are perspectives and how that can just lead you in yeah in your pursuit of knowledge. Huge, huge. Um, Wonderful. Okay, so first of all, I haven't shared the birthdays because I'm going to list them in the comments here because once again, the King of Clubs has a birthday for every month of the year. So rather than rattling them off, you can look in the description to see the birthday. So these are the birth cards. And again, remember that with this system, based on the zodiac sign from which you're born and the planet that rules that card, that's how you get your secondary energy. So we're here with Kim, whose birth card has the solar energy of the King of Clubs. And we're here with Chloe, whose secondary card is the King of Clubs. So how it shows up for everybody is different. So it doesn't just have to be your birth card for one of the birthdays. You can also have it as your planetary ruler. And additionally, somebody like myself, I am not a King of Clubs, and it is not a major part of my roadmap. In fact, the King of Clubs doesn't show up on my life long roadmap, but there are times where the King of Clubs will show up in a personal reading. And we typically, the way that I help people to understand this ancient system is to look at the big picture, your lifelong roadmap, also the current picture that you're living, the story that is living out for you this year. It ought to be shared here that Chloe is about to start a new solar year, a whole new roadmap comes. With the equinox every year on September 22nd, she'll get a whole new roadmap. And so on our birthdays, when we get the roadmaps, you can see you might have the King of Clubs. And when you have the King of Clubs, depending on what position it is giving you a little bit of insight into how you are stepping into your mastery of the mind. For me personally, just this week, so it can go from year long to 7 weeks to weekly to daily. The calculation. If you want to know more, you can sign up for a call with me. I always have my link here there, and the calls are free, just 30 minutes, and we can talk about you and your cards. But for me, this week, the King of Clubs is my Pluto card, which means that I am being challenged by the master of the mind or by people perhaps who are kings of clubs, which am not experiencing as of this point. So yeah, the Pluto for
And
me, yeah.
well, you know what's also interesting, I was going to say, is the 36th year or the 35th year, which is what I'm in right now, is
Yeah.
also the King of Clubs pinnacle year. So I just
Oh,
finished, or I'm about to finish the King of Club pinnacle year. So for people to know, their 35th year, if they're a King of Clubs,
is there
more specifically primary, but right. That's also, I just wanted to throw that out there
So,
as
okay,
well.
let's talk a little bit. Let's take a little quick detour of pinnacle year is when you often reach a crowning achievement in your career. Something is culminating. It can be a very high point, right? The pinnacle. So, what have you experienced this year that for you feels so? It's the completion of it. You're like a couple days away from the new energies, and
Yeah.
it takes a minute,
I,
right?
I wish I could say I wish I could say I'm like way pinnacled out, but I feel like just noticing since working with this system, I almost feel like you get to the pinnacle, but it's almost like the beginning. So I
Mm.
feel like the energy is going to be continuing, but I feel like I've reached a point of clarity in my kind of my direction, my path forward.
Mhm.
Again, is switching from kind of my past life and past career, pivoting more towards my new path spiritually, being a Reiki master and teaching Reiki, these kinds of things that really I've gotten clarity on basically this entire past year. So I
Okay.
feel like the pinnacle is almost like clarity and purpose, life path purpose, that will be kind of taken on from here. So
And so,
that's kind of what I feel at this, yeah,
yeah,
how it's
so
shown up.
Kim can go back to age 35 and thinking what was happening around age 35 that concluded, or that you hit a high point in a career. And sometimes it's often like a high point that is going to indicate like I have done my work here and now I'm moving on to into a different area. That's one way of looking at it. I know for me,
Mm.
my pinnacle year, and I have different cards, but my pinnacle year concluded with the end of my high school teaching career. It just, and I didn't
Mm.
plan it that way. It happened.
Right.
And then I went out on a high. I was nominated as teacher of the year in my final year. And it was really like a lovely, like, gratitude moment for me. Like, I have served this community well, but I'm done here and I'm moving on to something else. And so I also like what you said, Chloe, about how the pinnacle, you might not have it all figured out. And just also, just because from one day you're 35 and the next day you're 36, your energy doesn't just turn on and off like that, right? It carries,
Right.
like, as you're starting a new chapter and a new book and a new author's way of
Right.
writing, like, it takes a minute. And the processing is a
I mean,
really
I will be hosting my first international retreat. Oh, sorry.
huge.
As this transition occurs. So there's got to be something related to that as well, in terms of leadership as a king of
Absolutely.
clubs kind of thing, right? So that
Absolutely.
probably is an example.
And it's a great
Yeah.
high point too. Like, that is like you've done the work in this year. You've done the
Mm,
work and now you get to enjoy,
right.
like, you're literally leaving on a jet plane tomorrow, right? To go to
Right. Literally. Yep.
Con, yes, to lead that is so
Yeah.
fabulous. So
Yeah.
that is an example of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so there are details. Again, Chloe does study these cards, so she understands that there are things such as pinnacle years that are important to just to know about, especially if you can see it upcoming, if you're rising up into your pinnacle. Anybody who is rising into their 52nd year is almost like a pinnacle for everybody. It's called the critical year. I'm currently living it and experiencing it, and I have been aware that it is coming. And so all the work that I've been putting into place coming into this year is really powerful. Where your attention goes, energy flows, all of that. I don't need to say this to kings of clubs. They know. They know that the word is their wand. And just wrapping it back up real quick to where the cards are for you, what you can see in your roadmap. And I opened up what it means for me to have King of Clubs as Pluto. This would be an example. And again, this is just a weekly energy for me. So it's not as big as if it were my Pluto card for the entire year and or for life. But I transform myself because that's what Pluto wants to do, is transform us to become more responsible and clear in my communications, assuming a position of leadership and authority in what a field that is important to me. So that really speaks to the energy of your card, like that leadership, that authority, that power, that awareness of your thought,
Communication.
communication. Yes, all of it. So it is fascinating to see where it shows up for you in roadmaps. And if you're curious to know more, again, you can hop on a clarity call with me and I'd be happy to show that. I'm also multitasking here in the background, and I was going to pull up both of your roadmaps just to see if there's anything else I can see there. What else? What did I not mention that you think is like something that people listening to this, either if they are a king of clubs or know a king of clubs or have a king of clubs somewhere in their roadmap, that would be beneficial for them to know?
I'll talk. I'll speak to the to knowing a king of clubs. I I think that you're really good because you know this. For example, the way I communicate is quick and to the point. And there have been
Yeah.
times when people have mistaken that for rudeness,
Yes.
especially through texts or
Mm,
through or emails. Do you know, I worked with a lady who actually thought that I was being rude by how I was communicating, and so I started just putting a heart emoji on every single message I sent to her,
Mm,
and that softened her ability to understand what I was saying. It was just really weird. It's like a little game I play. But to if you know a king of clubs, recognize that we're pretty oftentimes. I mean, I'm speaking to, and we get to the point quicker because we feel like it's almost a given. And I'm recognizing that everyone doesn't get there as fast as I get there. I'm sure Chloe's nodding her head. We get there, like she said, 5 steps ahead. Now, sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we didn't gather the information enough to actually be correct. But most of the time we're right. Most of the time we see something. She's You almost choked on your coffee, but it's so true. Most of the time we're right. And because we are correct, because we see this or whatever, we get that validation over and over and over again. So we trust that we're right. And that gives us the ability to be more correct more often.
Mm,
But because we're doing that, it can seem as if we're arrogant, or we might not fit in somewhere where people don't honor that, or they don't recognize that in us. If
you're
they're
just
trying
being
to put us
direct and
in a
you're
box, and if they're trying to keep us from being from our authority. For example, I'm just use a really quick example. Um, my husband and my father and I were doing something, and they were moving a building, and I was watching them move this building, and I saw something that was a little uncomfortable to me. Like it looked like this strap maybe would make this building fall. So I stopped the process because I was watching, right? And I told my husband, he came over, goes, "Why are you stopping this?" And I said, "Because this might fall." And he's like, "It won't fall." He ignored what I saw and walked away. And I was like, pissed, right? Like as you would be, because it made me upset. My father came around, and my father, he looked at it and he said, "Well, it doesn't really look like it will, but you know what? You got to trust your gut, and I trust you, so I'm going to tighten that strap." And it just gave me that authority. And I remember thinking those two approaches to the same type of knowledge
mm,
makes a big difference when you love a king. When you love a king of clubs, especially, just honoring that they probably see something, and just if it's not going to, I'm not saying you have to give them complete authority and autonomy to rule everything, but recognizing that they just may be right more often than they're wrong
Yeah.
may make it a little bit more cohesive for you in a relationship. And I think that's just something that would make my life a little simpler in some situations. But I also recognize that I could be a little softer in my communication, and
mm,
understanding that not everyone is okay with a one word answer. They may need a little more information, right? And understanding how other people may need, and by be knowing perhaps their birth card, or kind of by recognizing their personality, I can respond a little softer and maybe a little bit more um, completely with certain
mm.
people. But it's easy to communicate with Chloe because she gets me, I get her. We're not feeling like we're
Totally.
on each other's toes or anything, by just being direct and clear and kind and quick, right?
And quick, right? Which is the
Yeah.
opposite of my energy, my triple 10 energy, where I'm like, I'm learning also. And that is very helpful, Kim. Thank you for sharing that. Is knowing who, this is why and how the cards can be so helpful when you understand that we are all walking different variations of various energies. And if you're talking to a king, and especially a king of clubs, who that communication, the mastery of communication, the mastery of the mind, and just like having a direct boom, here it is, like is helpful. And I know that, Chloe, you have experienced my verbal, and you've had to come back to me and be like, can you like clear all the weeds from what you were just saying? What's the relevant piece of information, please? And I'm like, oh, gotcha. I just see you nodding, smiling.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes I cut
Well,
you off
yeah.
talking, Andrew. Do you do that? I cut Andy off, and I feel bad about it. But it's like, okay, I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to get through the weeds, right? I'm like, okay, I got it. I got the answer. You threw it out there. Let's move on to the next thing. And I apologized to her the last conversation we had about that, because I thought that was really rude. She's like, no, this is just what we do. Like, she wasn't offended by it. I would have been offended by it. Kind of, oh my gosh, I'm walking all over the top of what she's saying. And she's like, no, you're not. You're not. You're just
Yeah.
getting through the weeds.
Because I
So
see you
learning.
guys as like
Yeah.
walking with like machetes in a jungle, like the king of clubs, like, and literally leading the way for the rest of us. And I don't have, I mean, except for my first karma card, I don't have clubs. I'm a spade diamond. So club is not part of my energy, my most basic energy makeup. It,
Hmm.
again,
Hmm.
it's karma, but makes a difference. You have anything?
Yeah.
additional to share, Ms. Chloe?
Well, I just think, I mean, hit it nail on the head with the directness, in terms of that we are very direct communicators, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think, highlighting again, going back to the fact of being a woman. And I think that there's a double standard there, right? I think if a
Right.
man were to communicate that way, it would be more accepted, right? You wouldn't get that, oh, she's being bitchy or she's being whatever, right? But I
Right.
think, that comes up for us as women, and there's this compensating we kind of have to do. And thinking about the Pluto Queen of Hearts card, is there something like, right, where like the heart, we have to add the heart at the end of the email, even though we're not meaning anything wrong, and we're just trying to get to the, we're just relaying the information. We're not being, rude about it, but okay, well, our Pluto is okay, we got to add that heart just to make sure everyone feels okay, right?
Oh,
So
so
you know I,
interesting.
I love that. And in fact, I'm like, that's noted, Kim. I might borrow that from you. So
It
I just
works.
think
It
that,
works.
yeah, again, recognizing that, yeah, I'm sure it does. Yeah, I love that. It's a great idea. Um, so I just recognizing that, I think, especially with women, right, that women as club of, that we have to, that sometimes there's this compensating we have to do, and it's really nice when we don't have to do that compensating, and when we have partners and friends and whomever who just get us and have this. I've always actually kind of struggled with this. Like, I really appreciate friends who understand there's a base level of love between us, just, we can do the quick texting and I don't have to justify or explain myself. And I think that that's, really nice in relationships where people just kind of get the energy there.
It's
So
it's huge. It is huge. And it is something for, and it's something that I have come to understand and accept and love myself for my verbosity. Like I know that that is part of it, but it's something for me to be aware of with who the person that I'm speaking. If I'm speaking to another 10, forget about it. It's great. Like we just like, "Ah," and it's big energy and it's all over the place and back and forth. And then when you're speaking to a king, just being a little bit more honoring of their time and and the directness. It is helpful information to have. And once again, like if you're hearing this for the first time and you're wondering if you're a king energy, look into the description to see all the birthdays that are of the king of clubs, and or if you're don't see your birthday there and would like to know about your planetary ruling card, feel free to um, hit me up for a clarity call, and I would be glad to share your birthday cards with you because when we know better, we do better, and we understand each other better. And whew, that is a huge part of communication, right? Understanding how to communicate with so that your message can be received by the other person without their eyes glazing over.
right.
Look at both of you guys like, okay, and here she goes again. She's like not so direct.
No.
Okay. I like to look at some of the birthdays to wrap things up and celebrity birthdays of King of Clubs. And the one that jumped out for me, if we're thinking about how I want to say creative too, because I do think that, creativity, our thoughts and what we put into the universe, how we take action on the thoughts that we have is Walt Disney. Walt Disney was a king of clubs. Uh, yeah. Well, and just to balance that out, so was Queen Elizabeth II.
She and I happen to
Hmm.
share a birthday.
You do, yes. So
Yes.
she's also a Four of Hearts then. And you've
Yes.
known
So
that about Queen
I
Elizabeth.
know that. Yes. I share a birthday with Queen Elizabeth and Michael Franti.
Michael
Oh,
Bronte is on here. I'm going to write that one in. He's not in my
So,
book.
but yeah, Queen Elizabeth and I are, and I can relate to her. She was a strong, stern queen, but she had
yes,
benevolent as well, and she reigned a very, very long time. And so I'm fascinated with her historically, and the
totally.
choices she had to make. And I think that that's kind of fun to think about her as a king of clubs, and then the other side of Michael Franti with his lovely, joyful music and what the messages he puts out through his work. So
His big Four of Hearts energy. You can see that too because it is such lovely music. But yeah, Queen Elizabeth would be a great example of I mean, she was in a leadership role for a very, very, very long time. And yeah, in her masculine energy. Well, I just want to thank you both so much for taking time out of your schedules to help share understanding of this mystical wisdom, how it lands personally for people, and how we can how these cards can help us know ourselves better, love ourselves better, understand ourselves better. It is a spiritual tool. And then there is regular guidance that you can look to help you work with the energy. So I know I get excited when I have that King of Clubs energy in my roadmap. And again, I'm just being a little bit challenged by it this week, but those challenges are so helpful. They're so illuminating. We often learn through the challenges, right? It's not like, oh, this was amazing and so easy and I learned a lot. No, it's like we remember the hard stuff. We remember the challenges. So I'm
We
just aware this week that I'm working
Can
with
I
that.
add something before you
Yes, of
sign
course.
off? I want to thank you because you are the one that introduced me to the Magi cards. You're the one that introduced me to
Me
this
too.
intense work. And because of it, it's helped me to understand myself better, as well as understanding other people in my lives. And it's done exactly what you've just said. So I want to thank you for doing that. And I'm really glad that I took the time to do that. And I've shared it with a lot of people as well. And it always brings some clarity. It always brings some information, and people go, "Oh, that makes so much sense." So if anybody is listening to this is at all curious, I highly recommend you give Andy a call because she's really good at this and dedicates her life to it. And I think that you would really enjoy the time you spend with her. She's fabulous as you can't if you can't tell already. I think she's amazing.
Love you. Thank you. That's why
And
the,
one more
yeah,
thing. I find it interesting that even though you don't have this King of Clubs in around in your personal charts very often,
yeah.
you surround yourself by a lot of Kings of Clubs. So that means it's a very interesting. We love you and you love us. So
Yes, I have a really great relationship, I think, with King of Club. And what's interesting, I'm noticing it's with female King of Clubs. There's not a male King of Clubs that comes to mind that's in my circle, but I called on four of you to see like, hey, who wants to be here for this conversation today? And the two of you were able to be here and record with me. So again, I'm so grateful, but they're all women King of Clubs too. And I find that very interesting that and it is true that I think that I am attracting, like I'm attracted to your natural ability to lead and to have clarity of thought and to be the wisdom seeker and to share that knowledge, but in such a benevolent way. I love King of Clubs. So, and I love you both. Thank you so much for being here. And next,
Feelings mutual.
oh,
yes, yes,
you.
definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. And next week, we kick off a brand new season, the season of the diamonds that represents fall in the Magi. And diamonds is the suit of money, money, money. Money, right? Show me where the money is, but also it's our values, what we value. So we will be working our way, starting with the Ace of Diamonds, so much to say on the Ace of Diamonds through the King over the next 13 weeks of fall season. And I would be remiss if I didn't wish Miss Chloe a very happy equinox birthday.
Thank you.
Woo,
Thank
happy
you.
birthday.
The year ahead
Thank
of
you.
you be illuminating and wonderful as you take the afterglow of your pinnacle year and kind of reflect. And safe travels to Teotihuacan and to that beautiful retreat that you're going to lead people
Thank you.
into that sacred space. So glad that you made some time to be here and share with us today. I'll see everybody back here next Monday for another Magi Monday, Ace of Diamonds. And as always, if you enjoyed what you heard here, if it resonates with you, please like, subscribe, share with people who you think that this will help in their soul journey. All right, here's to love and joy in the journey.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.